For a couple of days. The township will be billing West St. Meal for those services, and he has about another 2 days worth of work for them yet. Otherwise, mowing is still taking place on township roads since the weeds still grow, and ditches are being worked on at the places where paving will take place in September on Beaver Dam Road. And that is all that Don has to report to you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Christy Deisher-Eddy.
Thank you. The Brandywine Conservancy has announced that its fifth Bike the Brandywine event will be September 17th. If that sounds familiar, it's because that is the same day as Harmony Day. However, fortunately, the bike ride will focus on the southern part of the county. There will be 3 different routes, distances of 25, 45, and 62 miles, otherwise known as a metric century. All those routes will start and end at the Chadsford Historical Society in Chadsford, PA. Advance registration is $55 per rider, and you can register at www.bikethebrandywine.org. An All Partners meeting will also be held in October on a date yet to be announced. The Honeybrook Community Partnership met at the Honeybrook Fire Company grounds yesterday to discuss details for Harmony Day. They are still looking for volunteers from the community. We do have 2 folks committed from Park and Rec to help out on that day, and a 3rd looking at her schedule, but anyone is welcome to volunteer for that. If you go to hbpartnership.org, you can get the contact information or simply call the office and we'll connect you with the volunteer coordinator. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline 988 was launched in mid-July. This replaces the 10-digit number that used to be in use, although if folks still have that number, it is still live. More information is posted in the lobby and on the bulletin board outside the administration building. The Twin Valley Fire Department budget meeting will be on Tuesday, September 20 at 7 p.m. at the fire department, and Warren has indicated he will attend and report back to the board as to what is discussed. The draft budget has not yet been sent, but it will be sent ahead of the meeting, and they have asked that whatever is discussed today, later in the meeting by the board, be reported at that time. Just a note, I will not be present at the September 14 regular meeting. I will be in York, PA, attending a Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, or PSATS, training session as part of my graduate certificate program. And lastly, the township offices will be closed on Monday, September 5th, in observance of Labor Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Township Manager.
Just ask that you accept my written report as submitted earlier, and the only thing to note, which is going to probably click in with land preservation, is that I got notice today that Sheila Fleming of the Brandywine Conservancy is retiring next week and will be moving to northern Pennsylvania. But the rest of her staff will still be of assistance for the township. If you remember, she was the person from the Conservancy who provided the Icedale feasibility study a few months ago. That's all I have.
Great, thank you.
The other question, pointing out the parking space for Park and Ride.
Yeah, so we do have 2 rideshare spots open. They, signs came in a few months ago, and we'll just keep note of how often they're used. They've been up for a few weeks, and starting next month, we'll kind of give the board kind of an understanding of how well received they are and how much they're used. Thank you.
That's a quick response on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next, we move on to land preservation
They meet on Tuesday, so hopefully it'll be something more exciting than the report that their meeting is coming up.
First time in 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
And expecting
Since April.
some easements to consider.
Okay, thank you. Next is Planning Commission.
I don't believe there's anyone here for the planning commission tonight, but just a quick update. They have their regular meetings on August 25th. They do have one item on the agenda as of right now for Sweetwater Woodworking. That's a land development to rural application, actually. They had a little bit of an issue with a fire some time ago on Emory Road, and they're proposing a land development to replace that business that had burned down. So that will be reviewed and come before the board at a later date. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Recreation and Parks Board. Is anyone here?
Is anyone here from Park and Rec tonight? No. So they did meet, and I'm sorry, I need to scroll down a little bit. Discussion at their last meeting revolved around the park renovations. They came up with a list of concerns, however, they did not provide that list, so I don't have any more detail than that. I can report that the movie night in the park will be postponed until next spring, and the Horseshoe League proposal has been pushed back to next spring also. They do meet a week from tomorrow here again. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you. Next we'll move on to new business.
Point of order, I'm sorry. I do have an item to add to the agenda. We had as part of the bid that was opened this morning, there's an additional item to add to the agenda, and that is pardon me, I'm sorry. I have to get to it.
G1?
I'm sorry.
That's gonna be G1.
Yes. In addition to the item that we had reported for, we also need to approve or not approve the addition of this agenda item. Approve, not approve the apparent low bidder of an hourly rate for a triaxle dump truck to haul blacktop, quantity to be determined by the roadmaster for a minimum of 8 hours per truck. So that is the agenda item that will need to be voted on to be added, and then we can proceed as usual with the agenda, and then the amended agenda will be posted tomorrow, both on the website and outside the building, as per the Sunshine Act.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Apparent low bidder of the hours.
Well, you need to, first you need the motion to approve the addition of the agenda item.
Yes. And then you'll notice the agenda item has not changed to approve the low bidder or the paver operator and for the hourly rate for the truck. So that's how that's worded. Correct. Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve the additional item on the agenda.
Should be nothing for, nothing to share, make a motion.
Should I?
Yeah.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we'll move to the item. So we'll move it.
Yes.
The new item.
So for that item, we bid out by state law this contract. So we're going to be doing a paving project using liquid fuels this fall. Going to be replacing some blacktop on Beaver Dam, and the cost rises to the level that we had to put it out for public bid, advertised, which we did. We received a single bid this morning, and the bid tabulation is there. That bid was opened this morning by Chris Bry, our other administrative assistant, was there as well, and the bid tabulation is an hourly rate of $450. The estimated total is going to be $13,500. It's the only bid, and so I asked that the board approve so we can go forward with our paving project in the fall.
That includes the triaxle truck, right?
Correct.
Correct.
What was the motion?
I'll make a motion.
I listen.
Jason should motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is to approve or not approve the apparent low bidder for an operator of the 655D cat paver with 8.
No, that was.
That's what we just did for
Sorry, yeah,
G1.
sorry. Yeah, we're on to you now.
So first we voted to add the triaxle to the agenda. Then we voted on
Essentially,
both
the
items.
first motion was amending G1 of the agenda.
Correct. And
To
then we just
add a
added.
component to it that was missing.
Right.
Okay, so now we're on number 2.
Yes.
Yes.
To approve or not approve the list of bills for payment as prepared by the treasurer.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, approve or not approve a partial release of funds for Chestnut Ridge Stages 2 and 3, tax parcel number 22-8-52.5 and 22-8-52.6 52.4 respectively in the amount of $205,357 for site improvements.
Could you summarize what's in that?
Sure. Yeah, this release is essentially for stormwater management improvements on the site. In addition, there was installation of a basketball court that was part of the recreational facility, so that's also included in there, along with some other grading improvements that they're ongoing throughout the site.
And that's all part of the material of the HOA.
Yes, that will eventually be turned to the HOA at the appropriate time. It remains under the developer's maintenance and operation as of right now.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's,
Okay.
you want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the release.
I'll second.
All in favor? Next is to approve and not approve partial release of funds for Sweetwater Farm, Brook Estates, tax parcel number 22-7-49.1E in the amount of $189,226.45 for site improvements.
And just to give the board a slight summary, this is also for site grading improvements and the installation of storm sewer inlet boxes. There's also a large underground stormwater facility that went in as part of this release that was also inspected by our office. So that's essentially the summarization of where they are to date. They are currently curbing. If you've actually seen curbing, concrete trucks rolling through, I've been out there all week, so you'll see that next month at a future release.
Just for the benefit of people attending, most of you do understand that the developers are putting up money in escrow, so then when the work is completed, then it gets released. That's what these steps are. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, to approve or not approve a partial release of funds for Village Green Phase 3, tax parcel number 22-8-86 in the amount of $14,198.72.
And again, just for the benefit of the board, this release is strictly for the placement of amended soils between units 32 and 40, or 32 through 40, excuse me. This was also signed off by the design engineer as part of the MPDS permit. And just to clarify, this is not necessarily addressing grading issues that have been identified on the property. There are some grading issues that have been forwarded to the developer to address. We are holding funds separately for that line item in our remaining escrow now. So we are holding approximately $133,000 left in that phase, just for your knowledge. Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Make a motion to approve the partial release.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is to approve or not approve a partial release of funds for David Stoltzfus, Todd Road, tax parcel number 22-4-2 for stormwater improvements.
This is just an on-site stormwater management project that we're inspecting, and the majority of the release is related to stormwater management improvements. We are withholding some items as outlined in our letter for E&S control and also for completion of the gravel areas for the driveway.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is to support or not support the Twin Valley Fire Department's purchase of a new ladder truck.
So part of Honeybrook Township is covered by the Twin Valley Fire Department, and they're seeking to replace a vehicle on a 15-year cycle. So they're looking at replacing the ladder truck, and by getting in early, by placing an order this year, their price will be $1.7 million. If they wait later, there will be an additional $95,000 surcharge. So they're just asking permission from all municipalities that we serve to give them permission to move forward. They are not asking for funds from the township at this point. They would just like us to give them a response in letter form before the meeting next week, so they can put that in their budget and move ahead with the placement of the truck. Coming from a first responder background, it's an easy yes. They need trucks, they get old quickly, they're expensive, but they serve a purpose, so I would just ask that the board approve it, and we will get a letter out to them as soon as possible. And as Christie noted earlier, I will be at their budget meeting next week.
The next week or next month?
They announced it was in September.
September, sorry, at the September meeting.
Okay, I'll make a motion to support.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a motion to authorize or not authorize putting out the James A. Humboldt Memorial Park jump Phase 1 construction out for bid.
So we've been discussing this park upgrade for several months since I currently started. It is a over $4 million project if you look at all 4 phases. I believe the board and all of the associated committees kind of discussed it and thought that that price tag was a little bit too large. We currently have a DCNR matching grant of $225,000 for a pre-approved of Phase 1, which was about $770,000 when it was budgeted. In 2020, those costs probably had ballooned closer to $900,000 to $1 million without even looking at current construction costs. The board and I and the staff kind of discussed what maybe is missing in the township and believe that going forward with only the skate park portion and not doing the other associated costs would be beneficial because it's a service that we currently do not have in the community. Price points would be in the $200,000 range, which means DCNR would contribute 50%. So we're looking at about $100,000 to $150,000, which I think is a good investment. And that was based on the potential to get new parks in the near futures with potential new developments coming in, so we would have additional open space down the road, so we could have another look at what Humboldt Park has, because it is a very congested park. And that's, at least putting the skate park in now, would move the grant forward. We do have to put a resubmission in, change of scope with DCNR. I did have a meeting with them earlier in the week, and it's essentially a letter explaining the reasons why we want to do it. They indicated that it shouldn't be a problem and that they're appreciative that the township wants to use a portion of it. And if we don't use the totality of it, they encourage us to come back in the future with any future park developments because they do want to grant it. But they understand that if we're not going to use it, they can definitely get that funds out to another municipality that can use it for good. So my ask is that the board agrees to allow me to pursue putting in the skate park. We still have to work with DCNR to see whether it's biddable because it could be considered professional services as skateboard builders technically design it and build it, so we might not be able to bid it out. Typically, we might have to treat it as professional services and just enter into a contract. If this would just be the first steps, there would be definitely revisits with the board about how it's progressing, actual costs and construction dates, and if we do go forward with the skate park, we would again have public meetings again with people that would be using that facility to see what they want, and that would help guide the township into what we should construct. Skate park, BMX park for the community.
So if residents want to find out what's going on with that, they go to the Parks and Rec or check the website.
So it would be coming back in front of the board. If we would have a meeting, kind of how they had the jump meetings to begin with, a skateboard park developer would want to have another public meeting, which we would announce. We would advertise and we would put it on the website and encourage people that want to use that facility to come and essentially have a conversation with the skate park builder to kind of help facilitate where it'll go. So it'll be like a little mini jump and revisit, but they said that they could start in the fall and hopefully if the board gives approval, they could actually start working on building the park next spring and have it by summertime next year.
I'll make a motion to authorize.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Library to be the grant applicant for a Keystone Public Library facility and commit to ensuring that 50% match required for the grant is guaranteed by the township.
So the Honeybrook Community Library initially applied for an ARPA grant when that ARPA funds first came available last year, and it was directed mostly at nonprofits. Ultimately, the township, as we have spoken a few times about, elected to use the ARPA funds to pay for general government functions, which left us with some unallocated funds, which we have allocated previously to stormwater upgrades to the township facilities. A few weeks ago, I saw an opportunity for a Keystone Public Library grant through the Commonwealth. Well, they will match 50% of building costs for community libraries. So I reached out to Patchy Bank Cabral, who's here today. She gave a talk last week at our workshop, and to meet the 50% match, they're about $93,000 short. And they would like to participate in the grant. The grant has to be written by the municipality that serves, that the library serves. So my ask is that the board allows Honeybrook Township to be the grant writer and to guarantee the 50% match. The library has a fund set aside that they would commit to the program. We would work out some type of agreement, whether we hold it in escrow to ensure, but that we would guarantee at least $93,000, or whatever half the cost is. Applications are due by October 4th, so board approval tonight would let me work with Patchy to make sure that we get this grant approved. And it is competitive, but I think it's a good way to get back to the community. The library is a needed resource. They need expansion, and I think it's a good support to give.
Okay, I'll make a motion to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a motion to approve or not approve the purchase of a new township administration vehicle through CoStars in the 2022 budget.
Sure, so our vehicle isn't due to replace until next year, but it is falling apart. With production chain issues, vehicles are hard to come by, but occasionally they do show up through our CoStars program, which is essentially a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania program where suppliers can pre-bid their services to the Commonwealth, and that meets the bidding requirements of municipalities, so we can go directly through a CoStar vendor. So the ask is from the board, if that CoStar vehicle that comes up, a mid-size hybrid SUV that could replace our current vehicle, become available, that you authorize me to go ahead and make the purchase, and if that happens, we would then come back with a resolution allocating those funds to amend the budget.
A question, how old is that vehicle?
It's a 2012, which I believe we bought used.
It's a 2005.
Yeah, I thought it was back soon,
Yeah.
before my time.
So we could probably get historic plates for it.
Okay, I will make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is authorize or not authorize the township manager and township treasurer to invest unallocated funds with Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust.
So Pliget, which is the acronym for what you just said, is a organization that just deals with Commonwealth municipalities, and it permits us under very close laws to invest in certain funds that are backed by municipalities. The ask is that myself, along with the township treasurer, are permitted to invest reasonably whatever we have unallocated for the next year or so into various funds, so we could generate essentially $150,000 to $200,000 additional investment return that we can then use to give back to the community, support nonprofits, do many things. The investments are guaranteed. It's not like we're loaning out money to the bank. It actually holds those investments. And then I would work directly with the treasurer to make sure that we're investing in funds that won't be needed within the investment time. Currently, I think the 365-day rate is 3.84%. Last year it was, well, we're making 0.01% of the bank. So it would give us the opportunity to increase our revenue and then decide what we want to do. My suggestion would be give back to the nonprofits that need our support. But that could be decided next year.
Is that money just the general fund?
So that funds would be partially from a mutual fund in the general fund that's been sitting there just to gather additional interest. It's currently gathering 0.3%. Some funds would also be approved from our capital reserve, and then also land preservation. So as we see this land preservation easements come up, we have a roadmap of how much funds we need to keep back so we can always have funds to pay out for easements. The plan with the land preservation is to stack whatever's unallocated in 3-month increments. So at any point, 25% of our fund, which would be about $1 to $1.5 million, would always be available. Typically, we pay about $350,000 to $500,000 out in easements over quarterly payments. So there would always be at least a quarter to half of those funds. And we wouldn't allocate the land preservation funds until after the land preservation meeting, so we know essentially maybe what we are going to be looking at for the following year.
I'll make the motion to authorize the investment.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is town hall meetings.
Yeah. Forgot to bring this up at the workshop meeting, but I'll bring it now. We did have town hall meetings years ago, and I felt that they were helpful. So the proposal is to have a non-binding meeting in which people can come in, discuss what's on their mind, and it helps the supervisors to get a feel for what's going on in the community. So we had participation where at one point we had over 40 people show up, and then one meeting we had 4 people show up. But it gave us a sense of what we should be focused on, and I felt that we haven't done it in a while, so I just want to propose if we could get that back on track, maybe do something around the Labor Day period. That might be a way to kick it off. So, throwing that as a board.
So, the last couple of town hall meetings that I remember, I think your highest attendance was 5.
That was the last one, yeah. Well, which ones are you referring to?
The last few that I remember since I've been on board.
Yes, well, I just want to make sure that you're talking about the town hall meetings or other meetings.
Well, yeah, I mean, nice attendance is great, but normally our regular meeting size is 4 or 5 too, but town hall meetings we're talking about.
Yeah, because they were conducted around 2012 to 2014, the town hall meetings.
Okay. So what is different in regard to a town hall meeting as opposed to a regular township meeting?
Because we're pretty much relegated to time, and this way, if someone wants to get a more detailed conversation or information, we could even take time to look at the land preservation program document and point out exactly where the information is. This is it'd be more of a casual, informal meeting rather than making demands. Because I hear some people asking for information, and to be honest with you, we really don't have as much time, especially with our workshop and then on top of our regular board meeting.
At a town hall meeting, are we allowed to give people answers? Are they allowed to ask us a question and then we're allowed to just answer them
Well,
without
it's
any township guidance?
Yeah, it's not to provide any legal advice or anything that would put the township in any position where, you know, we're committing the township to anything. It's an informal, informational session, and mostly to give residents the opportunity to do the talking.
But as a resident, if I come in and I want to know something, and then the person that I'm asking can really basically not say anything back to me.
Well, if it's something like, where is the park located, or do we have, if those are things we would just, you know, caveat and say, right now we don't have any current plans, but if it's something that you'd like to pursue, you might want to go to the Park and Recreation, you know, and provide that input. If we say, do we want to cut taxes and things like that, I said, that's something that I can't commit to, or anything like that, that's the discretion of the board, and that would have to be brought up in a formal meeting.
But at a town hall meeting, where we're not allowed to basically answer anything, would we have then present a solicitor or a township manager?
Well, I guess, I mean, I suppose the question is, when you're saying a town hall meeting, are you anticipating all the supervisors present and participating, or?
They are welcome to do so. They're not required. It's, we had some meetings where all the supervisors attended, and we did say that, you know, we can't, because of the sunshine laws, I'd say that 2 or 3 meetings, I was the only supervisor there, and that's usually when it was winding down, or we only had 4 or 5 people show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends how you want to structure it.
Yeah.
I mean, my gut reaction would be, if you advertise it, then you don't run afoul of sunshine law provisions. I mean, I think if you're framing something as a town hall meeting, you want to frame it as, we're not going to be deliberating, you know, definitely not probably taking any action, but maybe it's something where you say, that's a great question, you know, maybe we, you know, as the board then decide you want to put it on the agenda for discussion at a future standard meeting or something of that nature, or, you know, have staff look into something. But I think it depends how you structure it a little bit. I mean, I think the goal really should be, if you're going to do something like that, a listening, you know, on the township side, more of a listening, hearing the questions, hearing the concerns, hearing what's important to the public, apart from what's on the agenda at a given meeting, type of setup.
I think sometimes it's challenging, though, to sit for an hour or 2 hours and have these peppered with questions, and, you know, you legally have to not necessarily make a township commitment. You know, you have to be,
Yeah, well,
because you're speaking
when
on behalf of
when
the
people
township.
ask us about, this was conducted after we lost the police department, so questions often come out, and I would say.
That was
that
in
was-
2006, right?
We disbanded around that, I think it was 2005, but the questions were coming back, will the township give us another police department? I said, that is something that we don't have any plans for, and so we can take that under advisement if you want us to start looking into it. And then after 3 or 4 meetings, we kept hearing, you know, people were asking about it, so that's when we proposed doing that law enforcement task force, so that was an outgrowth of it. But there was never a commitment from at any of the town hall meetings that said, this is what we're going to do. So rather than just keep saying to people, we'll get back to you on that, you know, it just gave us a gauge of where the interest and level of the community was.
But basically, at a town hall meeting, the only thing you can do is, we'll get back to you on that, right?
Yeah, but it also, as I said, that I know that some people would like to be able to, you know, speak openly and what's on their mind. But we emphasized at every meeting, this is not committal. This is nothing that, you know, I'm going to agree to because I can't do that on my own.
So how different would the town hall meeting be then than what we currently provide? You know, we have,
Yes, we do have the open
you
forums,
know,
yeah.
format,
Yes.
2 meetings a month
Yeah.
where the public is welcome to come in and voice. So I'm just wondering, is there enough, I mean, would there be enough to warrant having another meeting a month? Or once a quarter, or?
Yeah, we can give it a shot, see what kind of interest it generates. If it falls flat, then, you know, we made the effort, the attempt to reach out to the community, and if we get a good turnout, and then people say, you know, there's some other things we'd like to talk about, could we do this again? And then we could follow up on it.
But we do have, the, like she said, the 2 open forums,
Mhm.
and then we also have the township administration staff is here all week. We have email, supervisors@honeybrooktownship.com.
Yeah.
We have phone, we have a lot of ways for people to communicate with us.
If I may, I mean, I think that potentially is, you know, we do all the legal advertising requirements, but, and there is an open forum on the agenda. To me, a town hall is a moment where, you know, the township says, hey, public, come on in, we'd like to hear what's important to you.
Yes.
Versus just, you know, if you're here, say what you, do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying, and you don't have to do it, but I think that is kind of the difference. I mean, I think if you're going to do something like that, you could do it in a wide open forum of a, you know, anybody that's got something they're worried about, you know, feel free to come. I mean, or you could do targeted ones, you know, you could have a town hall about land preservation where maybe there's an educational element, you know, at the outset, and then some discussion to educate the public about what's going on or that type of thing. But if you're going to have something, I think it makes sense to take an additional step to try to put the message out there to get people engaged. That's the only reason
Yeah.
to do something like that versus what we already are doing.
I mean, would it be out there?
But that's the thing, we have to decide if it's conducted here, if the board's not amenable to that. You know, another venue. We did use the Honeybrook Elementary Center at one point because the response was so good that we knew that we couldn't accommodate the number of people in this building.
That was what, 2005 or 2003?
That was probably around 2013, when we had that large group. Because I had to reach out to the Honeybrook Elementary Center. There's a form to fill out. Purpose of it, get a waiver for the fee, you know, they waive the fee so that we didn't have to pay for the use of the gym for the evening. They did have someone that they had to put aside to make the screw to set up the chairs and stuff before they take down after the meeting. So my request is I'd be willing to set up a meeting, reach out to the board members if you're interested, if you're available. We could compile like 80 items that people seem to be concerned about, or you just basically say some of the people had an opportunity to speak and they felt satisfied that they had a chance to communicate to us.
Who do you envision for the township? I mean, besides possibly one or two of our others that we're allowed to do supervisor.
Well, I did conduct it in the past from the point of view of Board of Supervisors. At the time, Joe and I were new to positions, and it gave us the opportunity to listen to residents and give us a sense of where we should be steering our efforts for the township.
So does that mean the solicitor or the engineer or the manager?
We never reached out to them for a town hall meeting.
Thoughts about having staff
I don't know that I think, you know, I think if you're gonna do something like this, you know, you may wanna just kind of establish a framework of what it's like. You know, it's hard to say. You may want to have someone kind of moderating, being the guide, and frankly, I mean, for the board's benefit, so that, you know, if it starts to get out of hand, if Warren's there, he can be the one to, all right, let's, you know, move on to the next thing.
To the credit of our
Not
residents,
to-
but to the credit of our residents, we conducted several town hall meetings. No one ever got out of line. Everybody knew the boundaries, and they were really there with a sincere interest to talk about the community. And that's why we conducted that. And it wasn't like we reached out to supervisors and write them a personal invitation. The supervisors showed up because they were interested in listening to the residents. So that's what generated those meetings in the past. And there was a level of respect that we showed the community. They in turn showed it to us.
I think the answer on professionals and manager is, if they're not there, which I don't know that they need to be, the flip side of that is, the board members likely don't have the answers to questions and shouldn't be answering questions, but just be listening and saying,
Yeah.
you know, I as your elected official will look into that. You know, I'm willing to consider that idea that you shared, that I never really thought about as something that maybe our township wanted to do, or, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, give validation to the concerns, but not action plans, you know, just sort of you can ask questions to understand, you know, well, why are you interested in that? Why is that important? That type of thing. But with an element of caution of how you.
But to give you an example, we did have an agenda for one of the town hall meetings, and one of the things was to introduce Tracy Olson as one of our new supervisors. So it was an opportunity for people to know who the board members were. And that's what it essentially came down to. The board got out in the community that this was a good opportunity to talk about what's on their mind. And I hear a few people talking, and some of them are saying to me, you know, I'm really not sure if I understand. So I said, well, you know, we can always meet and talk. That's essentially what it's all about. And it's also me giving up a night, and also other supervisors may have to do the same if they want to participate. So the next step?
I think if we do it, we should in fact have a moderator. That way we have some, probably Warren. Sorry, Warren.
Well, I'm here for it.
Every night, you know that.
Well, and again, a lot of times the administration does have more insight than the board does, because there's a whole bunch of back-end work that we do outside of the daily activity of the board. So I would have no problem moderating or, you know, establishing the ground rules, work with Beth, if the board is interested in doing that, so we can at least advertise it, and in our advertisement, kind of indicate the layout of the expectations for the evening, or the afternoon, or whatever the board plans, if they want to do something like that.
I mean, if you only have 4 people attend, you don't need a whole lot of structure, but if you have 60, it's something that, you know, somebody needs to kind of be steering the ship of how that progresses. That, you know, everyone has an opportunity to kind of be heard, there is some meaningful dialogue, you know, but also to maybe just kind of make sure that we aren't making statements on behalf of the township that, you know,
That's what I'm worried about.
shouldn't be making.
Right, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
Your concern is well noted, but we were successful
Yeah.
in the past, and no one on the board of supervisors committed us in any way, shape, or form.
I believe Beth is just giving you some.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
talking about anything in the past, we're just clearly establishing that we can
for the
work.
future.
Absolutely, just making sure that the expectations are met between the board and the community, so that when you have a meeting, everyone knows the rules going in. They don't have to be.
And I feel like it's one of those things that, you know, if you find that in that town hall, you're spending 15 minutes on a topic, well, then maybe, you know, maybe that town hall isn't where that issue ends. You know, maybe you say, you guys, we're having a really great discussion. I feel like this is something that, you know, we need another discussion about on this topic. Or maybe, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty in the community. Maybe at the next supervisors meeting, we do a 10-minute presentation about this issue, just to give a broad overview for the good of the public. I mean, that type of thing. I mean,
That makes sense.
that's kind of my thoughts.
So do we have an opportunity to step forward, or we just, what would be the,
So if I'm not hearing any opposition, I'll work with the board directly to see time, dates, and what information that you would like to have of a town hall. And then once I get my guidance, I will move forward, work with Beth to ensure that we get it well-rounded and advertised, and then we'll put it back to the board. And if it goes that route, then we'll start putting it on social media, do a legal advertisement so we don't run amok of the Sunshine Act, and we'll go from there.
Good. Item 13.
We have 13
Yeah, I approve, no approve, it doesn't say here.
We're on old business. Each one.
Old business, continuation of discussion regarding Jennersville Hospital closure.
Jennifer Hospital sale has been completed. Still no buyer or movement on Break Hospital, so that is still vacant. As we have spoken about in the past, we unfortunately have benefited from the sale in Jennersville because that was our health location for their ALS, and since they are no longer associated with the new Jennersville Hospital, they have relocated their advanced life support up into the northern part of the county, which is where Honeyburg lays. So we have 2 advanced life support units at both our Elderson and Honeyburg locations, where before we only had a response unit and the paramedic would have to leave their vehicle. Now, my understanding is that they're riding with the response unit, so it's essentially ALS, BLS all the time. So you're always going to get a paramedic and an EMT on every single call within the township.
Next, we'll move to open forum. This is on any matter anybody wants to speak to. Just provide your name and your address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to share your comments.
By the way, there's an individual on the Zoom call.
Cheers.
In case you didn't know. I'm Valerie Scholes, 165 Caitlin Court, with the Foxbrook Development. For the last 3 months or so, since Chestnut Ridge put in their brand new basketball court, a number of people in our community have been using it, both adults and kids, and have really been enjoying it. And now all of a sudden the sign came up that said it's private, only residents can use it. I talked to the builder indicated the builder's agreement was that it would be that recreation area as well as the trails that are going to be put in were to be owned by the HOA with the option of the township to take over ownership. I would highly advise if you guys can take over ownership, that would be in the best interest of the community. It's already causing some contention. Kids have been kicked out by residents, told they're not allowed to be there. And these are kids who are just trying to play basketball. They're not doing anything destructive. If we want to create a cohesive community, I think that would be in the community's best interest of trying to find a way. Because we keep talking about expanding parks and recreation and having more recreational activities for kids to do out here. It's a shame when the builder has already put the money into it that the community can't take advantage of it. So I would highly advise if you guys could consider that. And I do want to talk about the town hall meeting. I appreciate you bringing that up, John, because I think the community needs more than 3 minutes to talk about their concerns. And they need to be in a forum that's not as restrictive as this forum is in terms of what we can discuss, whether or not we get feedback. I understand that that's not a formal meeting, and you don't want township supervisors to be committing to anything that isn't without deliberation. But we don't get a response back from you guys at these meetings. We come to these formal meetings with our concerns. We don't get any validation that you've heard our concerns, that you're going to follow up with them. Last meeting, I asked 3 different questions. I only had one individual who answered me. So there has to be some kind of forum where we get a commitment, an acknowledgement that you guys are going to look into things, and they will actually follow up and admit that, your residents have a concern. And you guys are sitting there looking at me and talking about Chestnut Ridge, but there's no acknowledgement that you guys agree that that is a concern.
Thank you for your comment. And I don't know what that, we as a whole board is deemed.
Well, the short answer to the question, when the township approved that subdivision plan, there was a decision made at that point in time that it was going to be owned and operated by the HOA. Right, and there was a continuous offer, I believe, in the future, upon completion of the trail, that if and when the township would decide to take dedication of the trail, that they could at that point in time. I think that was worded in the agreement that, as part of that subdivision approval, but the recreational amenities was proposed and it was approved as being held by the HOA. The developer does have the option, several options as under our saldo, and this is for any future development of ownership of that, and then that's decided upon and then approved by the supervisors.
Good evening, Board. My name is Hugh Farrell, 114 Stinson Drive in Chestnut Ridge Association. I'm part of the HOA. No disrespect to the lady behind us, but since that court has been placed up, we have had other people from other communities come in. Problem we're receiving is our safety for our own children. With that being said, teenagers are coming in and pushing our children out of of our public, non-public basketball court right now. So it's a major concern with us. Our HOA money and funds go to the upkeep and safety and the liability of the courts and the future built of the multi-use track and the track, track and the fields. So our biggest concern is we're not going to be liable for people to get hurt or disrespected or anything else in that community. Since we feels that we are spending our money to keep us self-contained and using that money to allow us to continue to grow our community. We're going into phase 2, and we're already having pushback from other communities around the community saying that, we should all be part of this basketball court. We're having problems already, so that's our biggest concern. We don't want to continue to have problems, so we would like to have a conclusion on this proposal from the developers and our, as a board member of the HOA.
Thank you.
Just as a point of reference, doesn't the HOA take over once they get to 70% occupancy? Yes. So right now, it's all the responsibility of the builder.
Yeah, I don't know if HOA is formally informed at this point for the development or not.
As part of the board, our money is being allocated to keep the upkeep of that right now, so we are responsible for that
You're
area.
paying dues, yeah.
And there is, I live in the development.
Can you say your name and your address, please?
I'm sorry, George Perez, 117 Stinson.
Thank you.
There is a board that has been set up, an HOA board that has been set up with with you as representing Chestnut Hill at this point, Chestnut Ridge at this point. And it's not an issue of not wanting the kids there. When it was first opened, it was probably 2 or 3 carloads of kids playing ball there. And when the little kids came over to play, is when the issue occurred. They didn't let them use part of the basketball court. We met with the builder at the time, you and myself, and the signs were strictly put up, so that the signs were strictly put up so that if an issue occurred and we asked them to leave, that we had the legal ramifications to do that. It wasn't to keep everybody out of there or anything else, it was just so that if something occurred when the kids were playing basketball, and one of the residents walked up and said, listen, you guys are living here, you need to take that noise or whatever somewhere else. We had the legal backing to do that. And that's what the sign was put up for. Nobody's trying to say the kids can't play ball. We're just saying, if our kids go up there, we don't want that pushed down. And that's the main issue with there, so that we have a say within who's coming in. That's all.
Thank you.
Karen Pesky Forest, 2287 Horseshoe Pike. One thing, John, I agree with you in regards to the town hall, whether it's one person or 60, we all deserve a voice. This is our community. You are here for us, because you're elected and we're paying. So we need this kind of community. Secondly, isn't it a breach of the Sunshine Act that when you developed the code of conduct, you did it behind closed doors, not in a public forum? Thirdly, why are you giving out money to, no offense, Chestnut Ridge, before they complete a complete phase? They don't complete the whole phase, but then they move on to phase 2. Now,
Valerie's development was promised a park, if I'm not correct, right? And other developments in the area were promised parks. They never got their park. Where do you want them to go? You know, they're kids, you can all work together. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to say about the Sunshine Act with the code of conduct, I thought that was that you were supposed to talk in public. So I think that was a violation, and the town hall, yes.
Good evening, everybody. Tyler Torrio, I live at 112 Stinson Drive, part of the Chestnut Ridge community. Just want to say, one, I think that the town hall idea is a great idea. This is my first meeting here, and just picking up the minutes, I mean, I can feel the frustration in the room in that it feels like maybe there's some voices that just aren't being heard. So I think that the whole point of the town hall is just to feel that you're being heard. And sometimes in life, you just want to feel that you are heard, if nothing else. So I appreciate that. I just want to say that I also hear the other residents in the room. And I have a bunch of kids trying to go play ball at the park, and I also have a 16-month-old son that hopefully will one day be enjoying that basketball court with some of your children and sharing that. But, you know, I also feel their frustration that if they were promised a park, then that we have a duty to deliver on those promises. I know tonight that we talked about, you know, the opportunity to build, you know, $225,000 called skateboard park, but to me, it seems like we could probably put in 10 basketball courts for the same price, right? Throughout the community. So I would just ask that you hear some of the contention already going into the community and maybe direct some of our resources and allocate our resources to try to smooth some of those things. Because we're not even finished the first phase in our neighborhood, and we already have some of our neighbors feeling disenfranchised and pushed out. I moved out into this community to have a community. I grew up in an area where the community was not as cohesive as it is here, and it's something that I want my son to grow up in a situation where, right, there is that sense of community, and that there is that sense of belonging, and that people do get along. This world can be a civil place. So it's a little part of the reason why I showed up here. I know that I'm taking a little bit longer at the time, but if I can maybe play the role of moderator, I think that there is a way forward. But I would ask respectfully, until the property is fully developed, there are other hazards at a construction job site that need to be considered here as well. When we are having, you know, neighboring kids joining and coming to these courts, I would ask that maybe they're accompanied by their adults, by their parents, because the last thing that we need is, you know, a slip and fall and then a nuclear verdict because somebody sued, and then things get really ugly. So, I mean, the human side of me says, let's all just play ball. But the reality is there are legal ramifications for this as well, and that's just the world we live in, unfortunately. So thank you for your time.
Can I just follow up on that real quick? I mean, that's where I think if the township took ownership, some of this would disappear. Because what I was told when D.R. Horton came and gave their proposal, and they were talking about giving the park over to the township, I said, well, does that mean the township's gonna take on, you know, the legal concerns if someone gets hurt? And they said, no, they were covered, that wasn't a concern. So if the township has that coverage, then, you know, then the HOA doesn't have to pay for maintenance. The township takes care of it, and we have a cohesive community, not one saying, this is my community, you can't come in here. Well, you come into our community too. I mean, it's a tit for tat. It starts this division in the community that's just not healthy.
Can I just on that point, I don't know all the specifics, but chances are, I mean, I think all of that discussion is premature because this is still completely under development. You know, the HOA is still in the builder's name. I mean, I think any consideration of that type of thing dedication to facilities like that typically happen once the development's built. So, and I think on the HOA side, there would have to be a formal request and probably a vote within the HOA if something like that was to occur. So it's not like the township can just decide we're gonna take this basketball court next week, even if we wanted to. So, there could be some process in the future potentially. I just want to make clear that I don't think that's anything that this board can act on at this point in time.
So what's the answer?
It's just.
You know,
development.
Is it, under HOA, is it? I mean,
That was
yes.
the answer, she just answered legally.
Yeah, legally. I'm still trying to, not all of us are geniuses here.
I think this is the first time the board's probably hearing this issue. I doubt that they have enough information to really give their thoughts on whether or not that would be something they would ever, meaningful to consider or want to do, frankly. Not to speak for the board, but I think, maybe they'll find out some more information and I don't know all the legalities of what was on the approved plan. I think Mike has some idea, but it's been a while since we were in the weeds of even what, could be in the future allowed or happen.
So can you go back and find a developer and have them put what they were promised when they first started that development? Or is that
I think that's a separate issue than what we're talking about here.
but the kids are only going to that park because they have no other place to go? That's all I'm asking. I mean, can you go back after the developer of that park and say, hey, you promised us, is it in writing where, they have to give you a park? And
If it was, I think the township would have been acting upon that. I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, and we're not gonna be able to answer that here today, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to lie here, none of us know what other kids and other developments we're talking about. There's not gonna be an answer right now, I'm sorry.
Wow. Paul Hay, 124 Recent Road, and I can't believe what I'm hearing here. We're everything in the world that's going on, and we're talking basketball courts. So you guys, I appreciate it, but what happened to, hey, they're there first. I'm sure you guys played basketball when you were younger on a court. You came in, there's other people playing, you wait, or you join in. How can you kick kids off the basketball court? You can't. I live across the street. I'm gonna play there. I would never kick anybody off. They wanna play, play. As far as getting hurt, my granddaughter ran into that little wire that was there, remember? When the court.
That's why it's not there anymore.
Guess what? Yeah, right. You know what I told her? Aggie, get up. Happens. People get hurt. No big deal.
That's you, sir, but the liability is what we're concerned about. We're footing that as HOA.
I get it. You just gotta pray, man. You gotta pray that no one's gonna sue you. I mean, what are you gonna do? Keep people off? Don't walk across the
We're
street.
not trying to keep people.
Don't walk across the street.
That's
You're gonna walk across the street and walk down the road and get hit by a car. Who are you gonna sue?
Excuse me, this is
Anyway,
a statement to the board, this is not an argument or anything.
I just got a little excited because it's.
You can do that in the parking lot, you're adults, you can all speak, this is your time to speak to the board.
I got you. So-
Thank you.
I do have a question about Chestnut Ridge, is they widened the road, so the speeds got a little bit higher, and I'd like to know if something's gonna be done as far as stop signs. I think I mentioned stop signs a couple of months ago, and I think you said stop signs don't curb traffic. I don't understand that answer. And maybe a crosswalk, maybe we ought to think about putting a crosswalk in at that intersection. So like I said, we come in and we do all these developments and we bring all these people in, but we don't think about life safety issues for the people that are already here and the people that are moving in. You know how many people cross that street, Recent Road, every day from one side to the other, from Hunter's Ridge over? Lots. And I'm just saying, we as the board, Warren, you told me one time before to call you and you come out. I don't think I should have to call you. I think you guys should go out there, sit there on Hunter's Run and just watch. And you'll see what I'm talking about. 25 miles an hour is No one does 25.
So respectfully, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
No, sir, about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I stood right here and I said the same thing, and your answer was, call me and I'd come out and look.
Yeah.
But I don't think I should have to call my supervisor to come look at an issue that I'm presenting to the whole board. I would think you would say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna put that on my agenda, I'm gonna go look. And I know my 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
I'd just like to take a moment again just to thank our neighbors. You know, I don't think anybody in our community, at least didn't even know these guys in a very short period of time, that they're anything but trying to be part of the community. I don't think that any of us have any intent to exclude anybody in the community's children, and if they feel that way, I genuinely feel sorry about that. And on behalf of the community, I apologize for that. But again, it is a situation where the property is under development, you know, so I respectfully ask, maybe we just punt this conversation until at least the first couple phases are done, until they're way back there in the community building homes, and there's only a few left, because I'm telling you, I walk this community probably more than anybody. I'm out there 3 times a day. I'm pretty sure my neighbor sees me walking with my son up and down Greason Road, and I will support him and say, it's crazy. I mean, it's like a highway on Greason Road. So, I mean, speed trap, speed bumps, something, because one of these kids, one of these days is gonna get hit, and it's gonna be really tragic. Hate for it to be mine. Thank you.
There's no other comments?
Do we have anybody on Zoom that has comments?
Zoom?
It's only me and multi-area township.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
And there have been people killed on reason.
This is what you have to do. Exactly. Just saying.